G'day guys, Dave here from Old Rigs Down Under. Welcome to the latest video. In this one, we're going to unload the F715 from the back of the trailer. And once it's off the trailer, I'm going to take you for a bit of a walk around the truck and the old V8 engines that came with it and show you some of the differences in between the V8 engine for an F model and a conventional. Hope you enjoy it, guys. Rightio, we've just unloaded some of these V8s here. Some of the bits and pieces. We're just going to try and get this F715 off the back. A little bit breezy, which is going to be a bit of a pain for the camera, sorry. Anyway, just got my brother Andy here, he's going to help out. Just bringing the tractor around now. Anyway, we've got the back of the truck clear. So the idea is we're going to just use the tractor here on the ramps with the stiff bar. Probably just going to chain it to the back of the truck because there's no ring feeder or pin provision on it. And I'll jump up inside Old Faithful and steer it down the track. We'll tow it back up there, bring it back down here and probably just give it a bit of a wash before we do anything else with it. Then the C motor, the slimline, we might nearly try and I reckon might try and prime it up and start it. It might nearly drive down the ramps, but anyway, that's not for now. So while I've got the help here, I'm going to get this old F715 off. Here comes Muscles with the muscle. Got 2135 white with the Hercules. Nice and heavy. We'll just bloody tow it off with that. Won't push the tractor around too much. We're sort of going uphill with it anyway, so it should come off pretty easily. Anyway, we'll get this stiff bar undone and get him hooked up. Rightio, we're going to try and get this thing off now. Got all the chains off it and we've got the stiff bar hooked up. Hopefully it's going to be okay. A little bit funny where it goes over the back cross member, but we've got it secured so the chain won't come off if it comes loose. That's the theory anyway. So we'll get in, we'll see if we can get a rolling, eh? Let's see what it wants to do. That's how you unload an F model. As Andy just said, success. Righto, so I've just given this old girl a bit of a wash up, and it's responded pretty well, really. I don't really know how old this paint is. It's not the original colour, but it could have been on there for a fair while, or has been on there for a fair while. So a lot of that mould's just come off, the moss and stuff off the roof's come off it. I just took to the bull bar with a little bit of Scotch-Brite and just cleaned up some of the rust on it. And yeah, a little bit of white left on there still, which is good. It's had a fair smack in the front end. You can sort of see there, I reckon, it's been heated up and, you know, tried to straighten it there. But I reckon this has come back here and clouded that. And in the process, maybe the cab's lifted up at the same time, who knows? But anyway, fair sort of a dent there and a fair sort of a dent there. Anyway, it's all part of the story. A little bit of the original green colour there. You can still see a little bit of green in and around there, the original Mack colour. It's pretty cool. It's cool features on this truck. It's still got these indicator lenses here with or indicator assemblies with the thick metal in them. The ones you buy now are about half that thickness. But yeah, it would have been a pretty good looking truck in its day, I reckon. So, a couple of interesting modifications. I've normally got a panel that goes up there, just a diagonal panel. But you can see that original green colour. But they've increased the cab mount area, which is just a little bit horrible. Can't imagine it riding too well. But anyway, yeah, that's what it is at the moment. So I'm going to try and get this cab tilted up. I think the torsion bars are broken. I did try and tilt it while I was up in Queensland. We're going to try and free the gear linkages up, but was able to do that without tilting the cab, which was handy for the job at hand up there. So, but yeah, it's got the good old F700 badge, and over this side it's got the V8 badge. So that's where the early trucks had them. All the early steel cabs had them there. Then once they started getting into the turboed V8s in the early 70s, they started to move a little bit. Some of them kept them there, some of the fiberglass cabs had them on the other side, but ultimately on the F models, the V8 badge ended up here. So early one's got the steering conversion across the dash. It's a fairly late one of these trucks. It's a 1969 model. It was about the last year they did it. End of 69, they had the steering box in behind the front wheel. Yeah, this one here, as I have explained in other videos, has the shaft running across the top of the dash. And so that's where all the business happens. Shepherd steering box there, controlled from the right hand side. No chains, just a solid shaft running from mitre box here to the mitre box under the steering wheel, just a 90-degree box. Yeah, so very interesting old truck, this one. It's got an early Cummins fitted, which I'll show you once the cab's tilted. I don't even know if it spins over. They told me that it wasn't running, but you know, whether it's crook, whether it's something that can be started. Got a drive shaft about as big as me shoe, like it's ridiculously short. They've moved everything back when they fitted the Cummins. So not only is the Cummins longer than a V8, but they've sat it back a fair way. It's got a fairly long fan assembly on it. So they've cut that original cross member and obviously moved the engine mounts a fair way back as well. But anyway, look, I don't wish to change any of that for the time being. If I can get it running, I will. That's the plan with it. And if the engine's crook, I'm not really going to spend too much time on it. It might just become a parts truck. But as it is, it would be cool just to start it up and drive it around. I mean, everything's still connected. You just get a little bit of air up to it and, you know, just make sure you had some brakes. And if you can get the engine running, the linkages on the quad box are starting to free up. I've just been spraying a bit of CRC and putting a bit of grease into them. They'll be okay. So you never know, it might run. But yeah, if it doesn't run, It's not going to worry me. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. A bit of a clean up inside. See where the two sticks are there, that's where all the action happens. The front one there with the red gear knob is your compound. So that's your low up to your top left, and then low split below it, direct around the corner, and then high split is towards me and up. Full complement of gauges on this one. And you can obviously see the panel running across the top of the dash there with the steering in it. This shape in America, well actually with the Australian trucks too initially, they had the air cleaner was under here, obviously accessed from outside the cab, but it didn't leave much room to have any sort of suspension seat. So I don't know if this would be original or if it's been retrofitted. There is a bit of a different colour in the paint, but that's also evident right throughout everything as well. So a lot of them just had a non-suspension seat with a good thick cushion, which, as nice as that might sound, would have been pretty horrible on a short wheelbase truck like this. But it's still got the early indicator push button assembly, right and left. See, because normally you'd have your indicator stalk over here, but with this steering across the dash setup, there's nowhere to clamp the signal stat indicator on what would be your steering column. So they used a shortened park brake handle, and they used a smaller steering wheel too. Same steering wheel as a V8B model. So yeah, these are the controls of it. They're actually fairly original in that department. I'm pretty happy about that. Not happy for really any other reason than just it's a good reference point. Other than the motor, I mean, it doesn't look like the cab's been messed with too much, which, yeah, from a restoration point of view for this truck or for other trucks, like I say, it's just a really good reference point. It's got the twin air horns just up here, which was a bit of a feature on these. And it's got the original roof lights still on, the old die-cast KD lights. Or great lights, I'm not sure what the early ones were. Yeah, but anyway, really cool. Taking a real shining to this truck. I know that's unusual with me and an F model, but I love the look of it. I reckon it would look fantastic back in the day. And just to see the way it's cleaned up today, it's really cool. You know, Kato bull bar. It's even got the Kato stamping into it. That there says Kato. I haven't really looked at the number yet, whether that means anything. It's probably just a serial number of the bar, I'd say. But yeah, I love it. It's awesome. So anyway, next step, try and get the cab up and see if it's gonna, well, see if the cab's gonna come up. That'll be interesting in itself. But yeah, then we'll just try and spin that Cummins over by hand and see what it's like. It might be locked absolutely solid, who knows. They did think that the engine had grabbed a bearing, but they were also shady on that as well, and that could quite well have been the old V8 that came out of it. So anyway, we'll find out in a little while. Certainly not a priority, but it's be nice to get into it and just see what we're up against. Another thing on this I've just noticed too, it's got the early park lights on it with the glass lens in them. They were on the B models. They're on the early R models, well, Flintstones I should say. I guess they were on the very first of the plastic bonnet R models, but they probably would have done away with them in about 67 or 68. So maybe this is a bit of an old stock truck. It's one of the last F715s. So yeah, just to still have those in place is pretty cool. I don't know any history on this truck yet. It went to Westco. That's the listing on it. So Westco was a truck dealership and workshop started by the Anderson family, who used to be with Mack's, and they had the Mack dealership, the first Mack franchises in Australia really, when it became Mack Trucks Australia. I mean, that's a very shortened version, but yeah, and they went on to build the leader trucks. So Westco was Western Agencies. I think that's how that came about. And yeah, so they were listed as the customer. So they bought the truck new in 1969 from Mack, and then they went on to sell it. So I don't know if those records are available. I don't think they would be, but you never know. There was still a Westco operating up until a year or so ago, so perhaps that's something I'll look into. But anyway, it's been green and whether it was painted from factory in this yellow colour or whether this is a restoration that's been perhaps done in the 80s or the early 90s or something like that. I mean, that's still 30 years ago, so 35 years ago. So anyway, I'll keep digging for the history. I love that sort of thing and try and find out a bit more about it. But anyway, yeah, the next step, I might show you this motor. We'll just do a quick run over it and then we'll get this cab up. All right, here we are at Desolation Row. This is where all the action happened about 40 years ago by the look of this scrap. Anyway, this was the engine out of the truck. So E&D 864 V8. Made from about 1962 through to about 1970. Probably the first ones out here were 1963. And I think the last ones sold were in 1970 in a batch of R700s. So that, the yellow F model that this has come out of, is one of the later ones, that's for sure. But anyway, it's still got this throttle linkage going to the rotary pump, which is pretty cool. I do have bits and pieces of another linkage, but anyway, it's always good to get it, and it's always good to have the linkage going right back to the pump. Now, obviously, there's a fair bit of rubbish and debris and stuff in there. I mean, this engine's been out in the weather for a long time. Fully aware of that, so I'm not too concerned what happens to it, in all truth. You can see down here, it's a bit hard to tell, but that's the remains of a valley cover. There should be a cover over the top of that, but because of all the leaves and whether it's been a nest or whether it's just been under a tree and just gathered that way, it's just rotted that bloody top cover out. See, this one here is cast alloy and it won't rot. But yeah, the tin one, I'll show you on this other engine here, that's what it's supposed to look like. I mean, this one's starting to go as well, but you can see it's a pressed tin cover with a couple of bolts in the guts of it. So you can see what it's supposed to be like and what it is like. So I'm under no illusions as to the condition of this engine. And it doesn't worry me. Like I've mentioned in an earlier video, it's got this exhaust on it. To me, this is absolute gold. I did mention in the other video there was 35 of these come to Australia. So all up the E&D 864s, there was about 75 B615s. There was 25 R615s that included the Flintstones and the tilt bonnet trucks. There was 5 R715s and there was 35 F715s. So there's not too many. There was 3 twin turbo trucks came out here. Twin turbo 864s in F models. There was only 3. So yeah, they certainly, and then of course the twin turbos used a different exhaust arrangement anyway. So they are a really rare thing. I've only ever seen one good set on a truck that's going to get restored. It's all in bits, but the engine's in really good nick. I've got a couple of pretty good left-hand side exhaust manifolds, and I've got 2 absolutely buggered right-hand side ones. And they're beyond repair. Like, they're really difficult because when you get down to this part here, which is usually where they break off, and that's the other thing too, if they get taken out of a truck, because they were a troublesome engine, they get taken out of a truck, they fall over, these break off because it's protruding. You know, they're a bit neglected, I suppose. But because of the way they run up to this flange here, there's not a whole lot of provision to weld a new piece on. So when they crack, if they crack through that flange, you don't get too many goes at that. So the couple I've got have been butchered in a way, but I guess they've had self-tappers on them and they've had wire holding the exhaust to it and that sort of thing. It's just been an absolute dog's breakfast. So to see one that's been on a buggered engine for potentially 30 years outside of the truck, to me is amazing. So yeah, really, really stoked about that. As I mentioned in the other video, if there was nothing else on this engine of any value, it wouldn't worry me at all. It's broken a piece out of here on the block, which was fairly common for these 864s. They weren't dowed very well at the back of them, and usually they had a quad box. More often than not, they had a quad box hanging off the back of them, which had no rear support. So yeah, they were a bit problematic in that area. it's got this rotary fuel pump on it, and it's still, when I move that throttle lever there before, it still moves. So that indicates to me that possibly the pump's still salvageable. They've just got a little mechanism inside them which runs from the governor housing to the hydraulic head at the front. And it's just a metering valve in there. And sometimes you can unstick them and they're still okay, but that's something I'll definitely use. These power steering pumps, they were different to the 865s and 866s. They had a different amount of teeth on the gear. So it's really good to get that too. And that's been sealed up. I mean, there's obviously like a hose off it here somewhere, but it'll probably still be okay. It probably had oil in it. There could be some water sitting at the bottom of it, but if you've got everything there, you can put a seal kit in them, you can build up a shaft or whatever. The F models also used a direct drive fan pulley on them, whereas the Flintstones and the B models had another section up here. They used a different piece across here, and where that, instead of having that that cast housing at the front of that pulley or just behind that pulley, they had a lift up section with a hollow going through it for that crossover for your water galleries, water manifolds. So yeah, that it is uniquely F model. In saying that though, the engine itself has come out of a, I'm going to say a B model. It's got a really early number on it, on these early 864s. Well, actually, sorry, on nearly all of the 864s that weren't in an F model, the engine number was here, right, stamped on the pan rail. That'll tell you on the early trucks, early engines, that it came out of a conventional and not a cab over. We go across to this other 864 engine here. This is actually out of an F model. You can see that number there, END 864A. A was the version that went to 280 horsepower, and that also is probably one of the later ones. I did a checkup. This engine, while it didn't come out of the yellow truck, it came out of the truck which was the chassis number before the yellow truck. So I don't know. I mean, that means nothing to most people, but I'm always interested by numbers and how these things came to be and where they came from. But yeah, that's the 6 cylinders used to be the same. On the early ones in the F models, they used to stamp them at the rear. So if you ever find an engine, a V8 or a 6 cylinder, and it's got a stamping here, you can be positive that it's come out of a cab over truck. Now, I'm not sure in the States what they did with trucks like the MBs and so forth like that, but I assume they could have still had a rear stamping like that. But anyway, between the two engines, there'll be a few usable parts there, and I'm pretty happy about that. So, pretty good score, I reckon. It's not for everyone, it's just junk to a lot of people. But there's some genuinely usable bits in there. Like I say, those manifolds to me are just gold. While I'd never scrap the rest of it, but if the rest of it fell into Port Phillip Bay after I got the manifolds off it, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. But obviously that's not going to happen here. I mean, it could still have a couple of good liners in it, you know. With your intake being open, there's only going to be a couple of cylinders that it's actually gone into, so there could be usable parts in it. But obviously, with the amount of time it's been open, you'd assume that most things are going to be buggered. Anyway, it's all good fun. Now I've just got to work out where I'm going to put them all. Even with this one, you know, full of pine needles. You know, they've been outside for a long time. But anyway, you never know. This block looks slightly better at the back of it than the other one. It's still not perfect. It's broken bolts off and so forth. Probably does give you a little bit of an idea. You can see broken bolt there. Yeah, so nearly all broken. So that gives you an indication of what they were like. But yeah, these sumps were sitting in the ground. Like they're all rusted and broken away. But you never know. The cranks could be okay. They could come up. That's got a sleeve on it. These early ones used a big sleeve on them. So they'll just get stripped down at some point, and like I say, there could be the odd usable bit in there. They might just make a nice coffee table. Anyway, I'm pretty happy with them. Okay, so I just want to quickly show you the difference between exhaust manifolds on these early V8s, the END 864. Obviously this is the F model one, which I've explained a little bit earlier. And you can see that if you look at the line of where the bolt pattern is along the head, the exhaust gas and the direction of the manifold goes upward out of the ports. and it runs along to the back of the engine to a flange here, right? So it's going that way. If you look at this one off a B model or a R model, or over in America they also put them in a C series. I'm not quite sure what else they put them in, but anyway, if you look at the bolt line, the exhaust gas and the manifold direction comes downward to a flange which sits underneath, and as you can see on an engine, that would be like that. So your port is or your flange is facing downwards, and the white piece to connect the two up is underneath the engine. So on the F model, it's ported to the back of the engine, to this flange, comes across, and the white piece is at the back. This was because they had the vertical stack, which came out at the right hand side at the back. So yeah, this has still got the original part number on the Y piece. So yeah, that's one difference, probably the major difference between the F models and the conventional trucks. Obviously you've got accelerator linkage here too, and I also did explain a little bit earlier about the front pulley setup. So there you go, but that's the difference in the exhaust manifolds. Okay, so the degree of difficulty is up there a bit. Torsion bars are either broken in the front of it or not adjusted. So I've got it up this far to begin with. I've got it propped up with some blocks of wood. So anyway, I'm just going to try and get it up, and they've got this piece here will click down into place. Seems like it's got to lift a long way yet. Anyway, I'll go up a bit further and just keep locking it as I go. But anyway, once it's up in the air, I'll try and adjust those torsion bars, or at least get the weight off them. Well, there shouldn't be any weight on them by the feel of it. It's that bloody heavy. And have a look at it. Be just nice if you can get the cab up. I mean, all the latch works. That's usually the first thing that seizes up. You've got these got a main latch in the middle, and then you've got this cable here. Well, normally it's seized over towards the cable stuck or rusted or something, but all that works. So anyway, I'll just keep on seeing if I can get the thing up in the air without getting under it and get it propped, and then we can work on that motor, work on the torsion bars. And I just tried to bar the engine over before, just from the gearbox. It does seem tight. So anyway, I'll have a look once it's up in the air. Righto, she's up in the air, so that's good. No fatalities in the making of this video. Well, not yet anyway. So it's up on the prop there, and it did actually get a fair bit easier as it went up, which perhaps indicates that there is a little bit of tension on the bars. So just couldn't lift it from its position right down on the stops. So anyway, what they've got is this torsion bar set up here. There's actually a spline in there, and there's an adjuster bolt there. So when it's in the up position like this, you want to be winding that torsion bar up. So as it comes down, as the cabin comes down, it pivots back over like that and puts tension onto this torsion bar here. So, and then it just assists you to lift it next time round. But anyway, that's something I'll look at. But there it is, the old Cummins. So they've got it a little way from the radiator, like with the Mack engines in these, both V8s and 6s, they were very close to the radiator. So it's a long way back. And being, like I said before, being longer than a V8 anyway, it's pushed that quad box a long way back and just got a miniature drive shaft in there. Anyway, just doesn't look real good. It's not covered in rust. There is a bit of oil on the end of it. I just tried to turn it before, just through the inspection hole on the top of the gearbox. I just put a bar in there, but didn't do any good. So anyway, I'm not holding out a great heap of hope for it, but yeah, if it spins over, that'd be cool. Pretty sure on these Cummins, as even the early ones, should still have an accessory drive pulley here. So I might just get a socket on there, see if we can bar it over. It's the old PT pump there. And they've mounted a power steering pump up here and used the original Mack canister. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, anyway, good to see she's up in the air. These early cabs are actually really good. They tilted, you know, when the tilting mechanism's adjusted properly, they give you a fair bit of room. You get a later model Australian truck, they wouldn't tilt half that bloody distance there. So these early ones are actually, you know, for an F model, they're quite good to work on. Anyway. All right, guys, going to leave the video there for this time round. As previously mentioned, the old Cummins are stuck, so it won't bar over by the accessory drive pulley or in the top of the quad box there in that inspection hole. So that'll be another video for another time. I hope you've enjoyed the walk around of the F715 and unloading it and checking out a few features on the old V8 engine that came out of it. So please tell your mates about the channel, like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll keep growing this thing. See you on the next one, guys.